Tell me a little bit about when did you start shooting? What age? How were you introduced to the game? Like, let's go all the way back to the very beginning.
So basically, big deer hunter, always been a hunter since I was a kid. We moved to Georgia and I needed some place to sight my rifle in. We found out that there was Elbert County Gun and Archery Club 10 miles from the house. So I went over, they had a rifle range, shot my rifle, sighted it in, went to the clubhouse, and these guys were shooting the game of skeet. And they invited me out to shoot skeet, and that was how it all kind of started from there at the age of 13.
How did you get from being introduced via some skeet shooters to shooting a shotgun to shooting NSCA registered targets?
So basically, right after I started shooting skeet, 2 to 3 months in, they had the Georgia State Championship there at Elbert County Gun and Archery Club. And it just so happened to be that Ed was there with Make a Break and John Kruger. I met John Kruger. He said I was really good, I should start shooting, and it kind of took off from there.
And what year was this?
Oh God, it's been so long I can't even remember.
How and when did you first meet Brandon?
Here, ironically, probably about 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, during PSCA days. And it was, there was a Make a Break shoot-off, and it was right there, and I'll never forget it. That was when I first had my interactions with him. I'd always heard Brandon Powell, and I'd always seen him because PSCA was on the TV, but that was the first time in the flesh. I remember that was the first time.
First time I met Brandon, I believe, was here at M&M. He came and shot, would have been at the time, I think what we called our Masters Cup.
I first met Brandon, golly, years ago. We were teenagers, I don't remember when. But Brandon, pretty much from the time he picked up a shotgun, I mean, it wasn't a few tournaments in, everybody knew who Brandon was. He's a talent like we'd never seen in terms of right away just being, somebody that could win a tournament anytime against all the best in the world. And he's 12, 13, 14 years old.
So we had a Masters Cup here. He shot in the tournament here. And I believe it was either that first trip up here or shortly thereafter, I gave him some lessons.
So he was just an unbelievable talent,
And this is while he was a teenager.
Not even almost a preteen, Brandon at 12, 13 years old. We're not talking about an 18, 19-year-old teenager here. We're talking about a 12, 13-year-old kid that is one of the best in the country, one of maybe in the world already, So it was. How could you not know who Brandon Powell was?
So at some point, you went to a tournament, you liked it, started going more, right? At some point, you decided sporting clays and this discipline was the thing for you. Like, what do you remember, like, when you fell in love with the game and when you really decided that this was what you want to dedicate a tremendous part of your life to?
Probably sooner than later. I would imagine within a year of shooting, I fell in love with it. And I think what drew me to it the most was the competitive part of it. The drive that it takes to win and compete, all the traveling, it's just a lot of fun.
So some of your earliest interactions with him were actually teaching him, not necessarily competing against him.
Yes, I remember, I can't remember how the dialogue took place or how I got hooked up with his dad, but he was here shooting in the tournament, and then we did lessons after that at some point.
Do you remember how old you both were at that time?
I want to say that he was about 15 years old, and I believe we're 4 or 5 years apart, so I was probably 19, Yeah, so he might have been 14 or 15, and I was 18 or 19, but...
you were both easily before 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah. When it comes to your initial skill building, everyone goes through that phase where you got to put the volume in and really build the skill. Is there a string of coaches? Like, how did you navigate that part of your development?
When I was younger, I worked a little bit with Anthony. I think a lot of it just comes from trial and error, shooting, and figuring out what works and what doesn't work.
So was it driven a lot by just shooting a lot of competition? Did you practice a lot during that period?
I think more of it was probably wing shooting and competition more so than practice.
Okay, but you were never on, apart from some lessons with Anthony, you were never really on like a coaching program or worked with someone consistently throughout that. You really navigated it yourself.
Correct. From the get-go.
Anthony described that about you to me as learning how to shoot on the make or break. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think that's fair?
I burned a lot of ammo on make or break. I remember the very first shoot back to Georgia State, the very first tournament I ever shot. I think I shot 11 flats that one weekend on just make or break.
11 flats.
11 flats.
Yeah, that's learning how to shoot on the make or break.
He used to shoot a lot of make or break. So up there on the stage, I think he likes the limelight. Up there on the stage, he'd be up there shooting it all day long, always trying to qualify, quite often winning the make or break. I think that's where he became the most known. He was up there shooting the make or breaks at the, at the pavilion, whereas it's a very spectator-friendly sport, and dominant in it. He was just such a fierce competitor.
How would you describe your shooting style in general terms?
Everything that I do is instinctive. A lot of hand-eye coordination, and over the years I've kind of perfected and how I move to the bird and what I do. I believe that to be a good shooter you've got to shoot all the methods that there are, but I'd say that 90% of the time I probably come from behind the target, so more swing through than anything. Right. And I attribute a lot of that to meeting George Digweed at a young age, being able to shoot over in England with him, and that was one of the guys that I looked up to right when I entered the sport because of, who he was and is today.
Did you spend any time training with George or lessons with George?
I've never had a lesson with George. I've shot with George a good bit, shot with him some in England when I was a kid, and it just kind of stuck from there.
How would you describe his shooting style as a fellow competitor? Technical shooting.
Unique, because I got to, in February, watch behind him in the RC Cup. I got to watch him shoot down in Florida. And break points, I was like, really? Because he really locks on for a lot longer than a lot of people. And you watch him come through pretty much every target. If there's a rising trap teal, he's taking it on the way down. It's like, huh.
How would you describe Brandon's shooting style technically?
So I haven't shot with him much until just recently, where we shot at the World Championship together on the same squad. Since then, it's been a number of years. He hadn't been shooting for a while, and we just hadn't happened to squad together. If I had to describe what he does, he kills the bird where you see it well. Kills it at the most opportune spot. He has a big window. He can shoot early. He can shoot really late. He matches the speed of the bird for a long period of time. That's how I would describe his style. Okay, so he gets to the right position to pull the trigger by being with the target. For however long necessary. So I feel like that would be how I would describe it in general. Is a lot of movement with the bird at times, and no movement with the bird at times, just depending upon what the bird allows. So meaning that if he's has time, he's in the gun, moving the gun with the bird for almost longer than anyone. Most of the time I would say his gun is behind the target, if the bird is crossing, etc. But he also shoots extremely quick on quartering and trap style birds where the gun is definitely not behind the bird. You're trapping it, or shooting it kind of off the arm on a spot shot, etc. So if you break that down to say, all right, well, what's your method? He's in sync with the clay for a long period of time, moving the gun from either behind the target to the front of the target, or killing the target. When he's killing the target early, it's just where it needs to be.
Brandon's shooting style is very similar to mine. There's a lot of pull. There's a lot of dynamics there. There's a lot of pull away. You do what you need to do. You do what the target needs. He shoots a lot of swing through, a lot of pull away. He attacks when he needs to, but he's got every trick in the game. But we all do. We all understand technique. We all understand what to do. What separates Brandon is as a competitor.
Kind of, if you're asking what is he doing, he has a big window. You know, he's with the bird early and shoots it late when he can, and if he has to shoot it early and shoot it early, that's what he does.
He's fierce, man. The bigger the pressure, the bigger the moment, the better he does. You know, it's almost like how guys would talk about Michael Jordan. Don't trash talk Michael Jordan. He's going to hang 30 on you in the fourth quarter. Brandon's very, very similar. The bigger the moment, the more he rises.
Could you differentiate kind of coming from behind versus swing through, right? I wouldn't say that George or you swings through, but you let the target pass the barrel. And there's, you know, like the guy we shot with earlier today, right? Could you distinguish that from your method?
Well, you know, he would actually mount, you know, behind the bird and never let the bird pass the barrel, where, you know, we start out, we let the bird slide past the barrel, and then we make a really controlled move through the target.
Okay.
There's a real fine line with how it works and how you have to do it, but it's probably the final step to becoming better in the game. You know, it's a step that definitely has to be shot and learned. 90, you know, even though I shoot it 90% of the time, I think that I may even shoot it more than that. You know, you're always going to have the line. There's so many different things that can happen when you don't have the line of the target and you don't come through the target.
So you look at a target, you call pull, you're probably going to let it pass the barrel, but if you mistakenly don't, you just kind of go with it.
Yeah, and I think this is something we talked about maybe in one of the episodes, that the only time I'm a little more hesitant to not come through the bird is if the bird is in a short window and there's not time to do that move. So where the shot opportunity to be able to kill it's very limited.
So you would maybe say it's your default unless you have very good reason otherwise.
Correct.
Do you think that to someone that isn't familiar with your shooting style from watching the videos that, you know, we've put out so far, do you think we're capturing it? Does it accurately describe kind of how you approach the game?
I think so. I think it does.
Okay. I think we all kind of have people that we aspire to in a game. You know, there's for me, there's people that I think are technically excellent and I aspire to. There's people that I think aesthetically, like you watch Richard Folds shoot, it's beautiful, right? Like
a machine.
It's beautiful, right? So like who are those for you? Like who do you look up to in different aspects?
Well, I mean, I've always looked up to Anthony and to George Digweed, Anthony Matarese, Richard Folds. Those have all been guys that I've always followed and continue to follow.
How would you describe him as a competitor? So not the technical aspects.
The guy is very good mentally. You know, I feel like he thrives off of competition and his adrenaline gets going and he channels it well in the right direction. When he's channeling his adrenaline well, his mental game is very good, and it's basically, I've described it as when he's shooting well, he's kind of wired for it, okay? Meaning that he channels that well, and when he's putting it all together, he's extremely good competitor because he's good mentally. The pressure doesn't bother him. He performs well when it counts. He probably performs better when it counts, and I feel like that's just his adrenaline gets going, and he channels that really well mentally. And a lot of people kind of lose that.
Are there other things that you think Brandon has in his competitive mindset that are unique or that help him be successful?
In his competitive mindset, I think it's something that's very hard to teach. It's very hard to understand. People write books about it, people study it and practice it their whole life, but finding the zone, so to speak, I don't really know what drives him to it. He probably doesn't fully know what drives him to it, but because I think he's so naturally talented at getting there. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the fear of losing. Like, it's so big for him that he can't fail, and that forces him over the top, where some personalities would crumble with that feeling.
It's really clear when we talk to your competitors that across the board they consider you to be a pretty fearsome competitor and a tough competitor. That, strong competitor, wired for it. Those are often the ways that you're described by other people in the game. What do you think makes that?
I've tried to figure that out for a long time. I don't know if some of that was just how I grew up. Some of the stuff I dealt with, when I was younger. I think a lot of it's just about mindset. I feel like that I've always had a lot of people want to see me fail. So that drives my mind to this crazy point to where I'm able to perform and get it done. It's really hard to explain.
I feel like his confidence in general is good. He probably believed at a young age that he was going to do well and he was going to win, etc. There's other people in shotgun sports that I feel like are able to perform really well when it counts. Just their beliefs that they've been told sometimes from a young age, you're the best, you're going to do well, you're going to beat everyone's ass. I think sometimes your mindset, if you actually are cultured in that environment, potentially an advantage. It's potentially a disadvantage for other general purposes, right? But in terms of being mentally confident and strong at that point, it's possible, because he's not the only person that I've kind of run into something similar to that. Where it's kind of, it seems that I've run into that something similar to that with some other folks. So I'm like, maybe this is not coincidence, right?
So you think, to some extent, Brandon's parents instilled in him a mindset that he can win, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something kind of down deep within him
Yep.
that he just believes that he can.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's possible. It's theory, obviously, right?
Interesting. I mean, when you talk about things growing up, like what do you mean? I mean, was it pressure from your parents to perform? Did they teach you how to deal with pressure? Like what is it about growing up that makes that for you?
Well, we touch on that, we go back to the growing up part of it. I think that I wasn't always given the best guidance, even though my parents loved me. They spent money. My parents, my grandparents spent money. They helped get me to these shoots. I just wasn't always given the best guidance as a kid. And that led to me kind of acting out and doing stuff that I shouldn't have did when I was younger. And unfortunately, it's followed me through the sport today at 36 years old. I still deal with a lot of the past.
Right. If you had to, go back to that 14, 15-year-old kid now, what would you tell him?
I don't know. You look back and you say, oh, I do a lot of things different. But then you think about, would you really? I mean, I think that everybody, if they could go back in time, they would change some things. But, we can't go back in time. So we just got to deal with it and make the best out of it.
There's some very famous athletes that are really motivated by people not wishing them well. I mean, Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame speech, right? Guy's the GOAT of basketball, the greatest of all time. He's on the podium talking about like not being on the cover of a magazine or some like high school coach that like wouldn't put him in, and he's going, you were wrong, buddy. He carried that around with him his entire NBA career. Like, do you think that's one of the things that motivates you?
That definitely drives me mentally to be able to do what I do. I think we can both agree that shooting is probably 80-85% mental. There's a big mental part of it, maybe not that much, but it takes a lot of mental strain out there to do what you do what we do. And that hate that people have and not respecting me definitely drives me. And I joke about it a lot, and I'm like, these people that don't like me, that won't give me a chance, they're going to be dead before they figure out that the more they've pushed me and poked me, the better I get.
And that's why I specifically pointed it out, because again, I had never seen him in person before. So it was the first time I was going to be able to like watch him shoot, and he was going to shoot the make or break, and he goes, and there may be a few other profanities that were thrown in, but I'll be clean. And he goes, you ready to watch me win this thing? He looks me dead in the eyes, grabs his gun. I've never met him before. He goes, you ready to watch me win this thing? Grabs his gun, and then he wins it. I'm like, wow, okay. Maybe I need to have that attitude when I get out there, more like, let's win this thing.
Right. I think the difference is that Brandon does that in a very outward way.
Right.
And it makes some people uncomfortable.
100%.
But do you think it's malicious?
Not at all. And I've actually noticed probably in the last couple of months that he's toned that down incredibly. And I don't know if it's to accommodate other people's personalities or to make other people feel better, but I've noticed him like sizzle out tone-wise a lot, especially since February. You'll see him and he's like, hey.
Right.
That type of outward confidence is definitely a little bit shunned in this game. It's a very small community. It's kind of a very southern, very hospitable, very humble, very close-knit. But something you've got to understand about Brandon, about champions, about Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or George Digweed, it's if they weren't like that, if they weren't cocky and arrogant and rude and whatever, they wouldn't be champions either. So a little bit about what makes us all dislike Brandon a little bit is also the same thing that makes him, you know, beat everybody more than they beat him. You know, just the way it is.
One of, I think, the charges leveled against you most frequently is that you're cocky, right? Or arrogant. I hear cocky more. What do you have to say to that? And where do you think like the difference between how you're approaching a competition and their perception is? Like, what do you think's driving that?
Well, I mean, if you walk into the box with no confidence, you're not going to do well. So, you know, my deal with that is that if you've got the hardware to back it up, meaning trophies, wins, it's not necessarily that you're cocky. You know, people perception of arrogance and cocky, they're different. You know, maybe I am. I think that you have to have that, though, to win, no doubt. That definitely gives you an edge.
Other people at the top of the game fear him, and to some extent, the narrative around him is fueled by that.
I do get asked if people at the top of the game fear him. No, I don't think so. I think that they believe in their own abilities, and I wouldn't say anybody fears him. But at the same time, they know how rarely he misses. They know how hard he is to beat. There's definitely an X on his back because of his talent, because of his results. It's a little bit self-inflicted too. He's a hothead. He's got a loud personality. He's not unlike me. Maybe I just have a little bit better filter and I'm a little bit more polished. But he's not a bad guy. He doesn't have a bad heart. But he's competitive. So he's gonna maybe be aggressive in the way he talks to you, in the sense like, oh, I'm gonna put it to you on this station kind of thing. But if you look at a football game or a basketball game or anything else, those guys are, you know, talking like that the whole time. So it's just the competitive personality. It's maybe not the norm. It's more the outlier in our game. When you think about football or basketball, more the outlier is the guy that's calm and not talking trash. So it's just his personality. It's an X on his back because of his talent. And yeah, it's not fear as much as maybe we're a little bit pissed off that he beats us so much. You know?
Yeah, I feel like the guy is a really good competitor, and when he is on your game, when he's on his game, you better be on your game, or there's a good chance he's going to beat your ass. So I feel like there's definitely people that are, you know, they're concerned or, you know, afraid of him, you know, so to speak, and rightfully so. The guy's a great shot. Personally, you know, I'm not afraid of him. Okay, so you know, I'm glad he's out shooting because of, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. You know, so if someone's shooting well, then you got to shoot well. So the reality is, if you're a competitor, you know, you should hope that there's good competition there.
When you're coming into an event, we're here at the North Central talking. What makes you feel really comfortable and prepared when you show up Tuesday afternoon, first of 8 parkours? What are the things you do to put you in the best possible place?
I mean, you know, back to, you know, training and thought process, I basically showing up, getting here, and just, you know, it's another day at the office for me. It's what I do. There's not a lot of of pre-planning and thinking about what's going to happen. We get there. The hardest part about winning a shoot is showing up to the shoot. The rest of it just kind of happens.
Meaning that you must face some pressure or expectation in the process of showing up.
Well, there's always that pressure, but you know, it's just part of the game.
Do you think that that's dulled with your experience over time?
I mean, everybody feels pressure. We all handle it differently. There's no doubt about that. It's, you know, and a lot of that pressure is adrenaline. You get anxious, and it's just how you handle it and channel it, and you got to channel it into a positive energy.
One thing I've noticed, we've shot a little bit together this year. One thing I've noticed is that you're very aware of your score while you're shooting. Different people have different attitudes about that. You know, why, you know, you've made the choice to be aware of your score. Why is that?
There again, pressure, being able to perform under pressure. I feel like it gives me an edge if I know that so-and-so shot this here or there. I go in there with the mindset to shoot 2 or 3 higher than they did. And it gives me something to work for.
Oh, so you're not, that's a whole nother level. You're not just aware of your score, you're aware of other people's scores before you shoot.
Always. And I feel like that gives me an edge also. That's why, you know, 100% of the time when I'm signed up for a shoot, I always shoot the last rotation on Sunday. That way I know the number I've got to post when I go out before I even get out to the station.
So, I mean, you must know that's pretty unusual. I mean, there's people that don't even want to know their own score while they're shooting, right? And they don't even want to touch the cards. Good shooters. I've shot with good people that don't even want to touch the cards. This is a level past that. This is, I want to know other people's scores.
Yeah, it
have you always done that?
I've always been that way, and it's one of the things I feel like helps me push it to the next level and helps me perform because, you know, for some reason I'm able to perform under pressure better than most, so I use it to my advantage, no doubt.
It must have taken some time to like train or develop that, right? I mean, do you remember back when I mean, if you've always done it, I guess, but do you remember back when you first started? Like, do you think it bothered you?
Well, I don't know that I got numb to it. I just learned how to deal with it. Obviously, at a younger age, feeling all that pressure, you don't really know what to do with it. So probably had a little more of an impact back then than it does now, but I don't know that a whole lot of that's changed. I honestly think that maybe it's one of those things I was either born with or just I've learned to deal with and didn't even realize that I was learning to deal with it.
Do you, in terms of competitive experience, do you know what your registered target count is, your lifetime count?
I think this year I'm going to break 100,000 registered targets.
Right. I think that's important. People try to measure their experience in years, but if you don't shoot, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
100,000 targets is a lot of experience. You're talking about, you know, 10,000 targets a year for 10 years at the fastest, really, right? Or, you know, less than that over your career. But, you know, the guy out there that shot 12, right, doesn't know he's on the field with a guy who has 10 times his experience.
Right, and that's, you know, a lot of people just don't understand, and I've heard Anthony Matarese touch on this several times, you know. A lot of people don't understand that I've probably missed more targets than most have ever shot at. So, you know, like I said, there's a fine line with that and experience and learning what to do and what not to do.
We touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask the question a little differently this time. You know, what part of your kind of personal history informs your competitive mindset? I mean, do you think there's things about your past that specifically harden your mindset?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, you know, being good, coming into this game when I was younger and, you know, winning right off the bat and, you know, causing some trouble here and there, the way people come down on me, some of the stuff that I had to go through, personal stuff even, I think that it definitely played a role in where I am today. as far as my mental capacity to be able to perform under pressure. There's no doubt.
How so? Like, can you give me a little detail there? Because this element of your competitive ability is really one of the distinguishing factors. Like, the reason that there's all these people that are good at fit task and can't handle sporting is the pressure of repetition. It's the pressure of that game, right? So, you know, an element of it is talent, but something else happened along the way.
No doubt, and like I said, you go back to mindset and repetition, and you know that I agree with you. There's a big difference between shooting 4 singles on a peg and shooting 4 pairs on a sporting clay station. I think a lot of that too, though, is fundamentals. I feel like one of my other advantages is that when I step into the box, I'm able to channel all that energy and focus for the 40 seconds that it takes me to get in there and pound out those 4 pairs, where I want to get in there, load my gun, call, pull, shoot, empty the gun, load the gun, call, pull, shoot, get out. My goal is to get in there, shoot, get out. And with that being said, though, my fundamentals are they're sound. My mount's great every time, my stance is always good. Every time that I miss is because I didn't trust what I was doing.
And so, do you really believe that at the limit, that every miss, I mean, forget about the overwhelming majority of misses, it really just comes down to trust?
Trust, 100%. Your eyes and your brain tell your hands what to do. Your hands hold the gun. There's no doubt about it. When you check up and you question something on a big 45, 50-yard crosser, you're going to miss it every time.
So even for you, fear is a factor?
Yes and no. I'm never scared when I step in the box of distance or speed. Sometimes it just boils down to I didn't trust the move, and I checked it, and I tried to see it when I should have just let it rip and let it happen.
Do you think that other people at the top of the game fear him?
I do, and I think that because of that attitude, it frustrates them because everyone's trying to be buddy-buddy best friends, and he doesn't really care. He wants to beat you, and everyone kind of takes, I don't know, like when you're on the field, that's okay because he wants to be your friend off of the field. It's not like he stays that way. It's like on the field, he's very outwardly competitive where everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, like, if you beat him on a station, like he's just like, oh, instead of like, oh. I actually admire it, if I'm honest with you.
If you have a need to compete, there's a ton of outlets for that, right? Like if we, instead of a shotgun, put a golf club in your hand, do you think you'd be just as passionate about that?
Probably. I think you got to do what you love what you do. It's probably a combination of both. Meeting people, the competitive part of it. It's just a fun game.
What do you think your strength is as a coach? Like everyone has, I think, some areas they're particularly good at. I think Anthony would say that he's among the best at explaining to people how to use their eyes correctly. Just one thing. If you had to pick 1 or 2 topics, what should be the thing that you come to a lesson with Brandon to talk about?
Probably mindset. Being that, majority of what we do is mental. I think a lot of people have the complete wrong mindset when they step in the box.
How so?
Just the way they think. I live and die by the fact that negative thought, negative result every time. If you step into the box at any point, I don't care if it's practice with your buddies, a competition, and you doubt anything that you're about to do, you're going to get a negative result. You have to walk in there, not scared, confident, ready to just, pound them. You've got to step in there and be confident.
Yeah, and I actually think that's kind of consistent with what I've seen, when I've shot with you. You're pretty positive when you're shooting.
You've got to be. You've got to be. Nobody likes a negative Nancy.
And you're still at a phase where you're traveling to do lessons, right? So you travel where?
Well, what I've been doing and what I'm trying to do more of is when I'm at a shoot, call the club, see if I could stay usually after the tournament while the targets are still set, get people to sign up that way. That way I'm not just going. Probably, later in the near future here, I'm going to start, advertising more, 3 or 4 days here at this place, 3 or 4 days here, and do it that way.
Okay. And where are you based out of your coaching?
Georgia, Cherokee Rose.
When it comes to coaching, what element of it do you enjoy the most? What's the most the rewarding part of it?
The interaction that you have with the people, watching them break more targets, it's a good feeling to sit there and be able to stand there and be able to watch somebody miss something, and you give them just, even if it's 1 or 2 things that they pick up and they stand there and they break that target, they turn around and they all smile.
What is the hardest part of coaching people?
I think sometimes it's filling the gap and getting people to understand. That's the toughest part of the game. Is I feel as a coach is trying to get somebody. I think it's the way you relay the information to them and the way they pick it up. What you may understand or what I may understand, we may explain that to somebody else and they may not understand it. So I think that in the end of the day, coaching is primarily how you break down what you're explaining so that they understand it. It's all about understanding the process. If they don't understand the process, then there's no way for them to learn it.
So, is that a big evolution? Do you feel like you have a long way to go there? Like, how? I'm off the list here, but I'm trying to articulate the question. Do you feel like you have a lot of growth still to do as a coach?
Yes and no. I think a lot of your coaching strictly boils down to getting the student to understand what you're explaining. And a lot of what I coach and what I explain is what I do. So it works. There's no doubt about that. It's just getting somebody else to understand that process.
Profile. This is an old profile of you from the PSCA days from 2015, actually right here at Northbrook. So watch this, and then
Brandon Powell,
I want to get your reaction and talk about it.
28-year-old shooter from Georgia.
A lot of my ability comes from just a natural ability to shoot. It's basically a lot of instinctive shooting. Before I knew it, I was, boom, 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 couple of shoots, and I was there. And I got there really, really quick, and it's kind of hard to deal with getting there on that level so quick and not knowing how to handle it.
Powell is an avid hunter and fisherman who has been shooting sporting clays since the age of 13.
If I'm not shooting, I'm fishing or hunting. So I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do. I've always had a passion for hunting whitetails and stuff like that.
Known among his peers in the shooting industry as a bad boy.
Brandon, at a young age, got a really bad rap. He's cocky, arrogant, kind of a hothead, and he's been through some struggles. He's had some bad decisions or just done some things that you don't really want to do as a pro athlete. And
he needs a good whooping. Yeah, but yeah, he's done some things that he shouldn't have done. But I think we all have at times, but he's coming around. He's doing better.
Brandon has started off as kind of a bad boy in the sport and has got suspended, is I think even fined.
Powell, in fact, relishes the role.
I love doing it. I love being out here. I love being able to travel the world, go different places, different cultures, different food, all the different things that combine, into the whole thing itself is amazing.
This notion that, that you're a bad boy or that you don't play by the rules. I hear that a lot, right? People that I know have never met you, right?
They
go,
believe it.
yeah, they do. They say, oh, you know, you guys have been shooting some video with Brandon, you know, he's this, you know, bad boy of the game. And I'm like, what do you mean? Right? And I get weird answers. What do you make of that? Like, I mean, you can't tell me it's not at least a little bit unearned, right?
Some of it.
Right?
Some of it, you know, like I said, we you know, everybody that has grown, we were all 15, 16, 17, 18 years old at once. We've all made, you know, some choices that weren't right. We've done stuff we shouldn't have done, but you grow up, you know, and I think the biggest thing here is that it wasn't that I didn't do a lot of this. It happened, but it happened, what, 25 years ago, you know, so let it go. I'm 36, not 18.
I mean, do you feel like, you know, this period of your past overly dominates the narrative around you at this point still?
100%. People just won't let stuff go. And I think what drives a lot of that is being at the top, winning. You know, when people feel threatened, they act in weird ways.
No, I mean, no doubt, dude, your ability and your results invite some of it. But I just have to wonder if, you know, again, if you had to do it again, would you maybe have done a couple things differently?
I would have done a couple things differently. Would I have changed everything I did? No. Because if I changed it all, I might not be where I am today.
Bill McGuire was very Bill McGuire in that clip. He was pretty balanced. But like, you know what, 8 years later, you know, what do you have to say to Bill about you needing a whooping?
That sounds like something Bill would say. Everybody loves Bill.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. There again, I was a kid. I was young. You know, I'm grown up now.
There was a segment in that video where, you know, Brad Kidd was talking about, you know, the cocky, arrogant thing. But, you know, I also know you have a passion for being out here.
I love the game, no doubt.
Do you think those things get mixed up for people watching you or that don't really know you?
I think they do. I think we've had these conversations in private before about, you know, people not understanding the difference between, you know, confident and cocky and arrogant, and I don't expect people to understand. It's, you know, when you're at the top and you're winning, it's just part of being a winner. I truly believe that it's something you're born with.
So, you know, you were away from the game for 5 years, and I'd like to. I have a couple questions about, you know, your absence, and then we'll talk about after your absence. But, you know, I think part of the mystery of Brandon Powell, for the people that haven't been around and shooting the game for a decade, you know, for the shooter that maybe has been around 2 or 3 years and is wondering maybe I should take a lesson with Brandon, but, you know, I don't know about this guy. Like, let's just talk about it. So what happened leading up to your absence?
So when I quit, 2016 roughly, 17, I can't remember. I think the last shoot that I shot and won was the US Open. I want to say it was 17. There was a lot of drama. Had a kid, full custody of her, so I had to take care of her. That was a big part of the growing up phase, I think, that transpired. But there was a lot of drama, and it got worse and it got worse, and I got to a point to where, as much as I loved the game, it was time to take a break and let all that kind of die off. It was too much.
I want a little more than that.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do.
So you were away from the game for 5 years.
Right.
For the avoidance of doubt and all of the people out there that think you were banned, let's talk about what actually happened leading up to that period, you know, in as much as it was appropriate. first of all, were you banned from the game?
No, I was not.
What actually happened?
I was put on a probationary period. Like I said, there was a lot of drama and a lot of things going around and circulating that were pretty much overwhelming. And as much as I love the game, I felt like it was best for me to take some time off, raise my child, and come back to the game. It's not something you're going to lose. You're not going to forget how to shoot a shotgun in 2 years, 5 years, 6 years. So when the time was right, I decided to come back.
But the incident that led up to the probation was, if I remember correctly, you were in the lead of a shoot-off, right? And you shot the last pair from the hip. You're a famously good hip shooter. And then someone complained.
Right.
Right? And that was the thing that actually incited the probation.
They're correct.
Do you think if there wasn't this noise around you otherwise, someone still complains and you get that probation?
I think that everywhere I go, no matter what shoot I'm at, there's always going to be 3 or 4 people that are looking to try to catch me stumbling somewhere and try to make, turn an anthill into a mountain. But I think that that's with everybody. I think it doesn't matter what you do in life. There's always going to see somebody out there. There's going to be somebody that wants to see you fail. And that's just part of life. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is.
Okay. What'd you do? I mean, I know you had your daughter, like you're working on some family stuff. With respect to shooting, what did you do during that 5-year period? Did you practice a lot? Did you walk away from it totally? Just how did 5 years is a pretty long time to be away from the game.
It is. I completely walked away from it. I think at one point I showed up, tried to shoot a state championship, didn't actually have my gun, bought a gun, thought that I could go and win, shot terrible, and so shot one time in a 5-year period, and was doing some coaching, working a little bit, a lot of hunting, and got back into the coaching part of it, and was doing that for 3 or 4 months, kind of leading up to the Open, when the guy I was actually coaching watched me shoot a little bit and said, "You need to go to the U.S. Open." I said, "I'm not ready to go back." He insisted, so he paid. I shot a couple of rounds of skeet, and off to the Open we went.
And you showed up and won that U.S. Open.
I did.
So just for the record, your story for the viewers is that you didn't really meaningfully practice during that 5-year period. A client kind of dragged you into it, and your total preparation was a couple rounds of skeet.
Shot 5-6 rounds of skeet, and skeet's, I think, the best game for your timing. When you don't shoot, your timing's off a little bit. So of course, I went into the U.S. Open. I think if I could go back and shoot that same U.S. Open now where I'm at with the confidence I'm shooting with, I could have shot 7 or 8 birds higher, and there wouldn't have been a shoot-off. But because that 5-year period went by where I didn't practice, I didn't have that confidence. I didn't know. I mean, I knew that I was good enough to show up and shoot good. I didn't know that I was going to show up and win it. I mean, that was my mindset. But, you can think one way and then there's reality. It just kind of happened. And from there, I was back in it.
How do you think he's been received since coming back? He comes back, no one's seen him for 5 years basically, and wins the U.S. Open.
Personally, I feel like, from what I've experienced, pretty well. I think there's people that hold his past definitely, and they're gonna, for lack of better explanation, try to bust his balls at any chance they can. Some of those people maybe had past experience with him. Some of them had no past experience. They're just going off of what, someone said, the guy did this and he's an asshole. So I think in general, pretty well. I know, I think, look, most people will give people the opportunity to prove themselves to do the right thing, et cetera. And I think in general he's been received well, but there's going to be somebody out there that's always going to try to give you a hard time. And, back to the part of, the guy being a good competitor, for some people it'd be easy if they could give him a hard time and he, wasn't there anymore beating them.
How do you think Brandon has been received since coming back and winning the U.S. Open in the last, year and a half or so?
I think Brandon's reception back to the sport since, the long layoff and coming back and winning the Open, I think it's been a little half and half from the sport. Maybe that's not even right. Maybe it's been a little 3/4 kind of not happy he's back and a quarter people are more accepting him. I think he's doing a pretty good job. He's still Brandon. He still has those personality flaws, if you want to call them that. But I can see that he's trying really hard. He's trying hard to be nice and be kind and, and that's, what more can you ask? I mean, he wants to be accepted. He wants to do well.
I can tell you for sure, because I've heard it and people have made the comment directly to me since we've started, we did these videos together. There's definitely people out there that are, quote, waiting for you to make a mistake.
100%.
I mean,
There's no doubt about it.
I've heard it. So, what do you have to say to those people? If you were to address them directly, if I was one of those people, what would you have to say to them?
I mean, at any given time, if I could walk up to those people and say something to them, I'd ask them why, I mean, I've for a long time have tried to understand why somebody would go out of their way to try to see somebody else fail because they're better at something than that person is. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense.
I believe that's a part of it. I also believe your history is a part of it.
Probably so.
Would you ask those people to give you, I don't want to say second chance, because there was no first chance with many of them, right? It's all based on narrative, but would you ask them to give you a shot? Well,
sure, and a lot of people don't know that, some of those people that cause me trouble, they've been apologized to. And you can't make something right with people that don't want to make it right. It's just all there is to it.
What would you like to see Brandon do, kind of both for himself and the game?
I mean, look, I've said it to him multiple times. He would probably tell you the same. I said, look, show up, shoot. It's a great opportunity for you. You can make a living. You know how to shoot. You can, you know how to shoot. You know what you're doing. You're a great competitor. Show up all the time, restore his past reputation, and he's going to have to do the right thing all the time because there's always going to be somebody looking to give him a hard time, given some history that he's had. And it's better if he's there. It's better for the game and better for him if he's out there competing and trying to make a living teaching and, utilizing his skill sets. Should show up and do the right thing all the time and, bite his tongue when he wants to say something different. That's what he should do.
Maybe take into consideration that people look up to the best in the game is all. Maybe think about cleaning up that side of things and realize that if you are going to be basically the best in this game, that you're a role model.
All Brandon needs to do to be accepted is grow up and wise up. If somebody's talking badly about you or saying something bad about you, kill them with kindness. Don't go back and fight. Don't get in the mix. Rise above. And if you can do that consistently and steadily, fair or not, that's where you are, my friend. People want you to fail. They're rooting against you. They don't like you. They don't want you here. The only way that you're going to come back and get accepted is he has to be 1,000,000 times better than me in that regard. If you really want that, you have to set your mind to it the way you set it to shooting 100 straight or winning the tournament. You got to set your mind to this, and you can't fall. It's got to be like you're trying to kill every pair. You've got to be on top of it every moment, because one bad moment, especially in these days with the camera pointing on you or whatever, could wreck you and set you back 10 years again. So you got to do better and be better than everybody, and that's a tall order for a young man. It is. I'm rooting for him.
Steve made a funny comment to me when we were planning. He goes, we didn't really set out to make, do an interview with Brandon about his past. We're just a couple of guys that make videos with monkey noises in them about shooting, right? But it kind of evolved there. So why did you agree to do this talk with us? And, you know, why didn't you be like, you know, get out of here, monkey noise guys?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you know, if people don't know my side of the story and they don't hear what happened, we're never going to squash this. We're never going to get past it. You know, a lot of these people, I feel like, have heard a rumor or they've heard this guy say that and they've never met me. You know, that's the crazy part of this is I found out that so many people have heard stories, and based on those stories, they think I'm a bad guy, and I'm not. I feel like I like to think that I'm one of the most likable people in the sport. Very personable. I like to have a good time. You've got to have fun. You know, there again, that goes back to do what you love what you do. And I love the game, and I want to see people do good. So I think that if we don't talk about these things, they'll never get fixed. They'll never know the truth.
Last year at the Nationals, I was there. I don't know if you remember. And I walked up to you after you had just lost by 1. And I remember the extremity of your disappointment. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings or bring it back up. I'm trying to suggest to you that as someone else, I was moved at how disappointed you were. I remember it was like tactile, it was like in the air. I mean, I don't know, do you have any reaction to that? Like, how long does that stay with you?
I don't think it's something that goes away. I think that I'm still holding on to it right now, and I'll hold on to it until we shoot Nationals this year.
I do want to give Tiffany a lot of credit because she is constantly there basically to support him, and I think that goes unacknowledged, and I want to make sure that she knows how big of a part that she plays in his being able to like excel.
Brandon, congratulations, 2023 national champion. Here we are 2 months after we filmed the back edge. What are you thinking right now?
It's crazy. I never thought that I'd be standing here, you know, this moment, you know, this is the one that I always wanted to win.
How many times have you been close?
Six runner-ups.
Do you remember before we knew each other well, we were on the other end after last year, and I remember talking to you at this moment after you were runner-up. You know, compare that difference.
I don't know, there was a lot of disappointment last year. You know, it hurts to be so close and to want something so bad and to fail. And, you know, this year we, you know, I took it to the limit and come out here with the mindset to, you know, shoot offensively instead of defensively, and it paid off. I missed some targets, but I killed more than everybody else.
It looked to me like you really turned on the gas on a couple stands, like 6 and 8.
Had to.
9.
Did
you go into 9 just deciding to let it totally
when
rip?
I watched those guys miss right there and open that lead back up again and give it back to me, and I knew that if I could hammer that station out and run that it was mine.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Look, it's always a team effort, Tiffany. What do you have to say?
I'm proud for him. He's always wanted us.
I know. I've watched you guys together. I see how much support comes from you to help him get to this point.
It's been a long time coming.
All right, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Couldn't be happier for you.
Thanks, buddy. Now go get the monkey.
Let's go get the monkey.
James, get in here now.